afternoon, everyone. Blanche Hampton, staff attorney for the Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center. I cover Baltimore, Carroll, and Howard counties. And much like the rest of you, Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center, we're open for business. We're still doing intakes, taking new clients. Since the vast majority of our clients come to us via telephone or online intake, we're still able to service them. So the fact that in-person meetings are limited at this time hasn't really had too much of an effect on us. And additionally, all of the counties that I serve utilize the Maryland Electronic Court Filing System, MDEC as it's known. So I don't have to go to the courthouse to physically file pleadings. I can just do it essentially from wherever I am. So for me, it's just, it hasn't really interrupted my practice or my representation, but I have made it a point to reach out to my victims because there is so much uncertainty as to what criminal trials and victim services are going to look like going forward. I have made it a point to reach out to my victims and just assure them that we're open for business and that we're still available to address the concerns that they have and to continue to ensure that their rights are upheld.
Thank you, Blanche. Thank you very much for that. Gloria, did you get a chance? Yeah, I want Gloria. I need. There you go.
I do.
You weren't going to get away.
All right. So once again, my name is Gloria Luckett, and I'm the Victim Services Coordinator for the Maryland Criminal Injuries Compensation Board, and I'm also the President of the Maryland Association of Victim Services Professionals. Can you hear me? Something's going on with my screen. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. So let me first tell you about AMASVAP. So that's the association that caters to victim service providers by providing training, networking, and brainstorming. And Steve Hess from the U.S. Attorney's Office is also president of that association. Right now, the meetings have been suspended, but hopefully we're going to get them back up and running very soon. And as far as Maryland Criminal Injuries Compensation, we are fully operational at this time. The only thing that we're not doing are the reconsideration hearings. All examiners are able to be made contact with via email. They will return calls. So right now we are definitely fully operational. We're able to take applications and respond to victims. And so one of the biggest things I believe that has helped us out a lot, we started with our own contingency plan and we built upon that. And in doing so, we have since been able to identify some of our strengths, weaknesses, and the capacity. So right now, victims are being attended to by all means necessary.
The first one is that everyone has talked about keeping up with their victims. And one of the concerns that we've had in our organization is I can keep up with somebody that has a cell phone, but I might not be able to keep up with somebody that has just a computer that they use at the library, which is no longer available to them, or an individual who uses a pay-as-you-go phone and now they no longer have a job to pay for that Go phone. How do we keep up with that individual? And let me add one more piece. Let's say we have the person that does have a smartphone, but doesn't have the Wi-Fi capacity to be able to dial in like we're doing right now. How do you address that type of service or need for that type of victim? And if anyone just begin, be the first to let them get sound off.
Hi.
Yes, Cynthia.
So we will send out a letter. We'll try to do it by mail, if possible. In cases where we're trying to get more information or get in touch with a victim because they were recently a victim of a crime, I attempt to reach out to them by phone. And if that's not successful, I relay that information to the ASA, and then he reaches out to the detective officer to see if he can locate them. that's what we've done and we're still doing.
We've been doing the same thing in Anne Arundel. We will reach out by letter. We also have, the advocates all have work cell phones. So it's amazing how many people will respond to a text as opposed to a phone call or returning a voicemail. So we will also text. And then, yes, when we are unable to locate our victims or witnesses, we will either reach out to the detectives, and we also have several investigators who work with our office who are wonderful about going out and trying to find the last address of that person and going out there and connecting with them. And sometimes they will even have that person call on the investigator's phone to us while they're there, and then we get whatever contact information we can, whether it's a new email or a new phone number or an alternate contact, and we will do it that way as well.
And this is Teresa. We've been pretty much doing the same thing. If we don't have we send letters and also reach out to our investigators or the detective on the case to reach out to the victims.
I was not aware we had this many investigators to go out and find our victims, because so often we have, we get notice that the office doesn't know who the victim is or where the victim is. And of course, this doesn't address the question, or it slightly addresses the question of if the victim is homeless or is very transient. But with the investigators that you have going out, that's great. Hey, Jill, how do you guys do it? Anything?
I'm sorry.
No
I
problem.
typed mine. We have we have 3 investigators that work within our office.
Wow. Okay.
And in the beginning, they were not going to go out and knock on any doors. But I would say within the last week or two, what they have been doing, even a little bit before that, is putting a note in their mailbox or on their door. And now they're actually knocking on the doors. Quite frankly, I usually contact our investigator that handled the case and we'll ask them, hey, help me find this victim.
Okay, and then you'll reach out.
Yes, sir.
Way. Yeah. See, I always like the answers that I get from Jill's side, because they once told me that sometimes a judge just gets on the phone and calls the guy's mother and tells him to pay his restitution. So there's a question that came across the chat group, which I think is a very good question, one I was going to get to. And it says, have victims been able to give victim impact statements during telephone pleas? And Jill took the opportunity to go ahead and answer that. But for the group, particularly for those people who are on telephone and are not able to see the chat group, we'll go ahead and, Jill, if you want to start off, and then the others tell us what's going on in your court.
So initially when we heard that we were going to do telephonic pleas, I immediately, not knowing how this was going to happen, went to my circuit court deputy and said, victims have a right. Otherwise,
Yes.
I'm going to have to call Johan to come up here. What are we going to do about this? And it went from there. And we told the judge, if we're going to do telephonic pleas, again, this is circuit court. The victim has a right to be there. So I then contacted our administrator at the courts, who's in charge of the phone system, if you will, and told her, I will need that password and the actual phone number in order for this conference call to take place. And then I notified the victim.
Same in Anne Arundel. We also are doing it where we have all the numbers for the courtrooms. And so the advocate will call the victim and then call the number, or call the victim and then the prosecutor connect to the prosecutor who is on the plea. Or even if the victim wants to hear on a status conference, we've told them that they can, whatever is going on, and they can listen. So we are like the go-between for every one of our cases.
We have to alert the
And-
court, and the court
Okay.
will give us, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Good.
We alert the court and to notify them if the victim is would like to be present or would like to participate, and then they will provide us with information on how to link in.
Okay, and do your clients, victims, normally want to participate, or is that
Not
one-off?
really. I mean, I've reached out to people,
Mhm.
one in particular, and there were several defendants, and no, I mean, but a victim impact statement was provided and we forwarded it to the court, but that individual did not want to be present or participate.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And did I miss anybody? Does anybody else want to answer? Because I have another follow-up question. Okay.
You missed me.
Oh, no, sorry, Teresa.
So we are doing the same thing, like as all of our coordinators have office issued cell phones, and especially in district court with the bond hearings, we notify the victims. We give them an opportunity to let us know if they want to be a part of the hearing. If they want to be a part of the hearing, what we do is we call them on our cell phone. We keep them on mute, but we also let the ASA know that they would like to speak to the judge during that session. So we keep them on hold till their case is called, and then and they have an opportunity to speak to the judge regards to their case. In regards to a plea, they still have an opportunity the same way. If they don't want to speak, we have a designated email for the victim witness unit, and they can send in information that we forward to the court, so the ASA can read that to the judge at the time.
And what if the victim says, I want to be present. I want to look the judge in the face and give that my impact statement because, that's what I want to do. I saw heads nodding, but anyone?
I'll answer this. If a prosecutor wants, in my county anyway, if a prosecutor believes that it's important in that particular case for a victim to participate and see this person in person, the defendant in person, and see everything live, what they have been doing, we had maybe 1 or 2 cases where they'll delay sentencing. And courts are open, they can be there.
Yes. And for those of us, I'll let someone else jump in, but there's a number of cases. It's the Antoine case and the Lopez case that talk about double jeopardy doesn't kick in simply because you bypass the impact statement, and each of those cases really reassert the importance of the victim to have the right to give an impact statement. Joan, were you about to say something before
I was just going to say that they would defer sentencing as well on guilty pleas if the victims do, want to be there and for whatever reason can't. But otherwise, yeah, they're being told that they can be a part of it too.
Okay, good.
And that will be the same for us. Defer the sentencing.
Defer the sentencing. Now, this doesn't mean that the individual stays locked up. They might have to come back for sentencing, but there it is. Gloria, do you have anything, or Blanche, as you guys think about the different roles?
Well, not so much myself as far as with the courts. I'm not in the courts, dealing with the victim. So I do have a point of contact in the event that a victim does call and need assistance with regards to a pending case in the court.
Okay.
For Baltimore City, let me say.
It's for Baltimore City, okay. Blanche, I'm looking at you. Anything?
Haven't had so much experience with that. The vast majority of my cases have been postponed, the earliest being July and the latest being December. So I'm still actually waiting to get, the official word on when I'll have an actual in-person hearing. But right now things are just getting pushed back.
Good. There is a question that gives me opportunity to bring Christina in, and that is, as you're talking with your victims in these plea hearings and prior to the trial hearings, if they need an interpreter, what is the practice of your counties on allowing them to get an interpreter, even though it's before the trial, where we know they have the right to an interpreter, but this is a preliminary activity?
You're asking me, right?
I know I'm throwing your question out there.
Oh, okay, because
for
I
the
hear
others.
Christina and I thought it's just me, right? Okay. What I've been doing, because I take care mostly of victims who don't speak English, that they only speak Spanish, I communicate in advance with the victim and witness coordinator, or sometimes directly with the state's attorney who is in charge of the case. Sometimes I have sent emails to Teresa Middleton. Thank you so much for responding and trying to figure out who's the right person. And I hear that the state's attorney is mostly aware already that the victim will need an interpreter, and that's been taken care of. That's what I hear. But I always make sure in advance that the person will have an interpreter.
Thank you. Any other county do things a little differently? You have you had this problem arise? Sylvia?
Hi.
Yes.
So our unit is completely bilingual, so we all speak Spanish. Okay, so if there's a Spanish speaking victim, I'll talk to them in Spanish. I'll translate if we're having a conference call. However, we use Ayuda, and they can provide interpreters, and it's free of charge. So that's what we've been using for non-Spanish, if they don't speak English or Spanish.
Okay.
That's our go-to.
Cynthia, can I ask what that was again?
Ayuda. They're called Ayuda, and they
I'll put it on the chat group.
Okay. Yes, Ayuda. That's it.
And that's for telephonic, please?
They help us. Well, we've been using Ayuda for in-person translation. That's primarily, and it's free for us. I mean, Rebecca set that up, but it's free of charge. So we try to utilize them. But now, because of this whole COVID, they've been very responsive, and we've been using them on conference calls. So it's been great. I mean, I had a conference call 2 days ago. The victim spoke Korean. I got a response within like 5 minutes and had my conference call that afternoon. So I've utilized them, I want to say, about 3 times in the past month.
Yeah, Ayuda is I want to say it's a nonprofit organization, but they're very active in providing a swath of languages that you can go out to. You tell them what you need, they go and find their contractor to serve as the translator or interpreter, and then they'll bring somebody to the table. I knew they did it over the phone, but I was not aware that they'll show up as well. They also do document translations if you need that. So Maryland has 5 languages that are English, French, Russian, Korean, and Chinese. Spanish, 6 languages, okay, that are primarily spoken. And Ayuda is one of the groups that you can go to get that type of service. There's also one with the state, the administrative courts. There's an organization that we got a briefing on at one time, and they do a nice job as well, but they charge a fee, and they need to be notified ahead of schedule that they're needed to show up. So we can kind of share that information out there. Christina, if you know the email for Ayuda or the webpage for Ayuda, could you shoot that up there? I'll put it on the chat group.
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Also, I was gonna say that there is another organization in Howard County that have a list of interpreters. Oh my God, I'm sorry. And they have all languages as well, and they translate documents. It's called FIRM, Foreign Informational Network Referral something. And it's in Howard County. I can send you also the link of the website. And they also charge. They charge per hour, but that's another option.
Good.
Hi, everyone. This is Becky Allen from the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth and Victim Services. The IUTA Language Bank is actually grant funded partially by our office, and it's been it's for victim services, and it's been in effect since I think late 2018. And so I think you apply to be a like basically someone who needs the services, and then you can reach out here and there whenever you need them as needed.
That is Rebecca Allen. She is in charge of victims, witness, coordinating, actually all things that I deal with for victims for the governor's office. Whether we need a PowerPoint figured out or we need to have a helicopter come pick us up, she's got it. She can take care of all of it. So thank you very much, Becky. I didn't realize you were going to be on.
Sure. Thank you.
The governor's office does a fantastic job, not only as a grant recipient, but for looking out for the services and issues that are going to impact the victims. And I'll say this very quickly. When COVID first hit and we were trying to figure out what we need to do as an organization, the governor's office really pulled together a bunch of victims coordinated organizations, victims' rights organizations, and said, what are the things that you need? What do we need to be thinking about? And I think that they were probably ahead of the curve on making certain that even if we didn't have all the answers, that we were at the table to consider what needs to be done. I am actually going to be on another session after this with the National Crime Victims Law Institute. And the reason they asked me to come on, because I was touting some of the work that the governor's office had done and how they were proactive. That's what I want us to do here, but I want to also give a nod to what the governor's office has done over this last couple of months. All right. Right, so there was another question that came across the chat group. In juvenile courts, the judge will continue to allow the victim to appear. Has that been something that you guys have had to experience, or are we still trying to do it by virtual meetings?
In Prince George's County, this is Michael Glenn. In Prince
Okay.
George's County, we're doing it virtually. If I mistyped there, what he is, if there is a contested hearing or the victim is extremely strident, I guess the word would be, he may delay it so that they may appear, but he's trying everything he can do to have them appear via Zoom.
Fantastic. Anyone else? That's Montgomery County, okay. Hey, Gloria, I do have a question for, if there's going to be a hearing on before the CICB, how are you, right now, I guess you're not doing any, or how is that working?
Yeah, right now we're not holding hearings. They're suspended right now, but they are currently working to put that in place. That's the only thing that CICB is not doing at this time, are the hearings, because we're taking into account HIPAA and all those type of things. But they are working to bring the board members together to work out all the glitches so that we can resume having the reconsideration hearings.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that in our office, Richard Hoffman tends to attend the appeals and things of that nature. And he's actually done a few virtual hearings before. I think, was it Court of Special Appeals, guys? Court of Special Appeals. So we're getting good at appearing before the judges. And it'll be good to be able to kind of roll through those as well. Anyone have a question?
I saw a couple that were kind of in here, kind of scattered about. One was to Miss Gloria. Are they still sending out money for victims that have been approved to be reimbursed?
Yes. Victims are receiving monies as normal. I mean, it may take a little bit more time based on how we're working, but things are being submitted so that victims can receive their checks.
Okay. And then another one that was to you is criminal injuries now accepting regular mail applications again?
Yes, we accept in regular and online applications. Someone is in the office, the director, on Tuesdays and Thursdays between the hours of 10 and 2.
Okay. And then I think this one is more generic. Are victim advocates able to be on the video for plea?
This is good. It's a very good question. Let me elaborate a little bit on that one. We know that the courtrooms are going to be lower because of social distancing. They're not going to allow as many people in. And some counties, and for example, the counties that are represented here, have victims advocates, but some victims have the Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center or MAD or Roberta's House as their advocates as well. Has the system, have you guys thought about whether the additional victims advocate will be allowed to be present with the victim, or will there be a clash of victimhood that we have to deal with?
Alonzo, I just asked my major that runs the courthouse that question today, as a matter of fact. And he indicated to me, as we all know, that each administrative judge has the authority to decide how they're going to run their courtrooms. So as I looked at each courtroom, they have marked the benches where you can sit. And obviously it has cut down tremendously the amount of people in that courtroom. So because I work so closely with our judicial office and our judges, and we are a small hick county up here, I asked if I could assist, because my concern is people getting really upset that they can't walk into the courtroom. Like, I know I have court, I know this case is going to be called, I want to be there, I'm family. Right. You can't tell me I can't go in here. So I think it's something that in my county we're going to have to work it out. And I want to talk to my prosecutors as well to find out before each court date starting July 20th, when we open, what do you anticipate is going to happen? You need to clarify with defense counsel if these witnesses need to come, because family wants to be in there. And the major told me he's going to be given a list of witnesses that are subpoenaed, and they're the ones that can go into the courtroom. So it'll be interesting.
Does that go for video recordings as well? Are they allowed to be in the video ones also, or is that just for the courtroom?
I was just experiencing the courtroom. When we do telephonic pleas, they are just strictly telephonic. Nobody's on any video in our county.
And that's the same with us. It's only on the telephonic. It's no video.
Same with us, Anne Arundel, yep.
And do you have a restriction, though, of saying, I've only given this number to Alonzo and his attorney, Alonzo's wife and other counselor or anything, they're not supposed to be on that call? No way for you to really regulate that.
Yeah, we're restricted to, how many, so that's why at the present, I'm not sure how it's going to be going forward, but at the present, we are limiting the number of people we're giving the number to. That's why the advocates call and, patch the other person in on the line as a conference call, because what we were told, and especially because, like you said, the HIPAA laws and everything, if we start giving the number out and we just have anybody calling into the courts, that's why we're trying to restrict how many people are calling in.
Okay. Well, now that does raise another question, though. There was nothing to stop somebody from walking into the courtroom previously, so why is there a way to stop them from being able to log on and watch it virtually? Anyone?
Well, I can tell you, I told my major I'm really concerned there's going to be you need extra staff up here because there are certain cases I know coming up that I'm really concerned about. And he basically just said it's going to be a learning experience for all of us, and we'll just have to take it day by day.
So let me ask a different question. Let's take this to, we've figured out what we are doing, what we did immediately, and how we've gone ahead and addressed some of the concerns that popped up while victims were in this whole thing, this whole situation. One, are there solutions that you had to come up with on the spur that you never thought there was going to be an issue? And two, what are you thinking about putting in place and keeping now that we've had this experience? There are some things that will just go away because we don't need them anymore. Everybody's going to go back to the courtroom. But there are some things that you're thinking, I'm sure you're thinking, we're going to keep this and move forward from there. Can someone touch on those two?
Well,
John,
I'll
you're
start.
off. Yes. Okay.
I am off. So one of the issues, well, let me say, every day at 2 o'clock, we are brainstorming. The Victim Services Unit is brainstorming. One of the big issues that did arise during this time was as a result of Governor Hogan's executive order with evictions. And during domestic violence incidents, the perpetrator thought that he did not have to leave the home based on that executive order. But however, that has been dealt with. And it's now understood across, I think we spoke to someone, Teresa in Frederick County, who made us aware how the sheriff's office and things are doing when they have to vacate the premises. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, originally the perpetrator thought that the governor's order protected him to remain on the premises when he had to be vacated. So that was one of the issues that we did deal with, and I think everything is good now with that.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
And another issue, and I know everybody was probably up in air, when we heard that offenders were being released.
I was going to go to that one.
Of
so
COVID-19. I know my antennas, my heart start jumping for victims, where the perpetrators may have to return to the home of the victim. So that was a major concern. How is the Department of Corrections going to handle that? How was Vaughn going to notify the victims to make sure that victims were being notified properly of the release of the offenders?
So one of the issues that popped up, hi Patricia, I see you sitting out there. One of the issues that we had as an organization was the whole idea of giving notice to the victim of their particular right to be present when there's going to be a change in the disposition of an offender's sentence. And when the order came out saying that we're going to remove, expedite the release of certain prisoners who were within 120 days, all the caveats that go with that, our main concern was, okay, well, wait a minute, at least we need to let our victims know that this is going on. I can say that, so we called parole and probation, we called the DOC, and they immediately gave us a list of these are the people that we're looking at, and we're getting in contact with the victims that we know of to let them know that there's going to be a change. And again, I always looked at that and said, oh, that's great, because our initial feeling, and I'll express this to the multiplicity of the group, our initial thought was they're going to try to sneak all these people out. Our victim's going to be walking down the street or sitting in their house and then look out the window and see this person that was supposed to be in jail looking up at them. So we were happy to see that the courts, that the correctional departments were allowing us to do that, providing that. But we continued on because there were some prisons that didn't provide the information. And we sent out a couple of letters. One, our executive director sent a letter, one to the governor, one to the secretary of the prisons and the commissions. And I think we're still waiting on one, if I could tell the story properly, to get back to us. and but the others did respond in a more timely manner. So, how do we make sure we were there to say there's a right, and this is even though that rule about let's save the prisoners, which as I tell people, I'm all for that. I understand if we can reduce the exposure, they put in rules for who is going to be released, but let's not be expediting one person's rights and at the detriment of another person's rights. How do you make certain that when you're coming up with policies on how to move your courts and how to work within your courts, your administrator is remembering to give you a call and say, how is this going to impact my victims? Do your administrative judges contact you, or do you contact them so that they incorporate victims' rights?
I can tell you in Washington County, if anything's going to change with a disposition of a case, there's always a notice that comes down from the courthouse. And our state's attorney reviews everything, every piece of mail that comes in, and he gives it to me.
Yeah.
So if something's going to change with a disposition, I notify the victim right away, if that's what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
I think that our state's attorney as well, or deputies have had these conversations. At least I know that we've been made aware of all like habeases, where that's been brought to our attention, where obviously those are civil, and a lot of times they just kind of went under our radar. I say ours in the victim advocacy. And so the deputies and the state's attorney made sure that we were also put on that list to be notified. So I'm along with everybody else, I get notice of that. And I think that they've had numerous conversations with the administrative judges in regards to getting the notifications of changes, and to include us, or it would come to us through them.
And with me, it comes down from the state's attorney and the deputies, and then it's CC'd to me with any hearings.
Okay, that's great. That gives me the impression that everybody is communicating with their various parties. But unfortunately, we keep coming up with examples where our attorneys and our victims' rights attorneys will call, and the answer is, well, we don't know who's doing what, and I want to coordinate with a hearing, but I don't know what the telephone number is. How do we address those type of situations where the information is just still in transition and we're not sure how to keep on top of things?
Well, I think the best way to do it, especially if you have in each state's attorney's office, there is a director of the victim services. If those individuals are reaching out to that person to get the information, because if you're trying to go through several different people, I think that's where you probably get lost in trying to get the information. But I think if you have one direct person that they are sending the information to, it would be a lot easier to get what you need.
Okay. Now, that's for the lawyers and those of us who are in and out of the courtroom and working with the victims advocates on a daily basis. How do my victims who didn't have the foresight to contact a representative or doesn't know a whole lot about the victims' rights, how do they make sure that they're on top of things? How do you make sure that they're informed?
I believe a lot of folks are using case search constantly. So they get on victims that even some of my folks that I work with will call me and say, what's this line mean that I see on case search? And it's just a discovery, that the defense is asking for discovery or something that simple. So I think a lot of victims are online finding out information on their own too.
I think also in light of, the courts closing for this period of time, there really everything's on pause. So a lot of the times, or many times that I was reaching out to victims initially once this started, was to let them know that, you know, this is the status of the case. We're just like in a holding pattern right now. And when we are updated, and I'm still not updated on all my cases, it's trickling in because right now everything is really, the court is not fully open. I mean, it looks like July 20th for us, we're going to have in-person hearings, but now it's really encouraged to be done remotely. Hope it makes sense.
Yes. Anybody else? All right, before I, Joan, you about to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to just clarify the question that you were asking. Is it for that you wanted to know that people who aren't aware of the case, like they're the victim, but they don't know anything? Like, I guess I was a little confused by.
Okay, I'm thinking of that victim who doesn't have the benefit of like Anne Arundel, where you're reaching out to every victim and letting them know what's going on. Other counties that, or maybe at the district court level where there's a crime that has occurred, they want to go to court, but they don't know to call the victims coordinator. They don't know to call Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center. How do your organizations reach out to those people that might get lost in the between the cracks?
They're not getting them. Okay.
Right.
Because they should be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know
As
a lot
far,
of, I'm sorry, yeah, you know, prior to COVID, you know, every application that was received, the victim would receive a letter from myself along with your rights to know brochure.
Mm-hmm.
That was prior to COVID, to ensure that they knew the services and things that were available and their rights.
Okay. And you continue to work that angle.
Yes.
Cynthia?
sorry, what I was going to say is that cases that are with, let's say they're going to be charged or we're looking, or it's a recent crime, my attorneys reach out to me and I then schedule a conference call. So that's what we've been doing, letting them know that, you know, we're looking to indict, but, you know, at the moment, you know, they're at the, you know, before the grand jury came together and started indicting again, we would let them know that it's going to take a while with COVID, and just letting them know that things are not running like they normally do. And if they have any questions, to contact us, and we try to get as much information as we can and let them know that they will get information in the mail regarding that case.
Okay. Securing crime victims' rights during a pandemic. A panel discussion on victims' rights brought to you by the Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center.